So this is the Youth Summit Town Hall webinar with Mayor Mashburn with our discussion panel, which includes Mateus Brokey, Rika Tignac, and myself, Ashley Kilnick. We really want to thank Mayor Mashburn for being here and taking the time out of your day. And today we'll be discussing public safety. So without further ado, I'm going to get started with the first question. How would you define public safety?
Well, it's kind of a oversimplified, probably response that I've prepared, but it's basically life and health issues, anything to do with life and health, and police, fire, and sanitation, and of course, having safe water throughout our community that is consumable. I mean, a lot of people can say safe. What's the definition of safe? It's water that we can drink and have no fear that there is any kind of contamination or poison or anything like that in it. And that's the brief approach to public safety.
With your definition in mind, what role could us youth play in maintaining public safety, along with preparing ourselves and future generations for creating a safe environment?
Good question. The best way is by setting a very good example. And oftentimes it's easy to break a rule or a law, an ordinance, and justify that somehow. And I think it's the way that we handle things like that is like my approach to laws that I don't like. I don't break them. I work to change them, but I don't disobey them. And I always put that message out that, yes, I may not approve of this, or I don't think it's a good law, but I do obey it because it is the law, and we're a law and order society, in my opinion. And so I think it's the best way I can answer that is by setting a good example. And we have to take it a step further and to our youth, explain why we're doing something, explain why we choose to do things that maybe others aren't doing, and give the good reasoning behind it so it's understandable, because not everybody can just look at something and fully grasp. They have to have it explained to them. And I think that we should all be adults and take the time to explain without adding a bunch of emotion to it.
Thank you. Civic peaceful protests are a way to make changes for the better in communities. Last year, many BLM protests took place right here in Simi Valley. In what ways has the City Council taken the voice of the people from the BLM protests and such to make Simi Valley safer for all people?
Thank you for the question. And I have to say, first off, we appreciate that all the protests that I'm aware of were peaceful. I'm not aware of any that were not peaceful. And that's a credit to this community and to the people that were actually participating in the protest. What I would like to point out is we don't discriminate in any way against anybody. And with that, we have 130,000 roughly people in the city, and we have to protect all of them at all times. And so we don't, regardless if you participate in a protest or not, we don't change the level of protection that we're going to give you. So I think we have a great police department. Our city council is committed to doing what's best for the community, whether you're on a street corner with signs or marching, or if you're sitting at home, you're going to get that same level of protection if at all possible, because that's our goal. Is we don't put people in groups. Everybody gets protected.
Simi Valley Youth Council have recently launched the very first Simi Valley Multicultural Festival, and this was to celebrate diversity and foster inclusion. We were wondering if there are any more plans to funding into events and programs just like this that foster inclusion in our city.
Yes, there is. I sit on the Cultural Arts Commission, and we just a few weeks ago had our most recent meeting, and we discussed just that, bringing different groups in and making sure that the Cultural Arts Center is open to all cultures, and we encourage the diversity. And we're also talking about reaching out and helping with getting other cultures to come in and let's say we have a Latino performance going on, then we're going to reach out to other cultures and ask them to come in and watch the Latino performance. And so it's very much on our radar. It's been talked about, and we're happy with the progress that's being made with these programs.
So what are your plans to make Simi Valley more energy efficient and less reliable on fossil fuels that are potentially harmful, and subsequent increased costs of natural gas?
Okay. First of all, when you say what are your plans, and I have no problem with telling you what my plans are, but I want to make sure you understand that I'm a vote of only one of 5. And so it's what does the council plan is based on that vote. So I'm happy to tell you what I would like to see, but remember, I'm not the only one vote. So it's once we come up with a consensus. But I would like to say that we've made many steps recently, and I have some notes here. We've installed over 6,000 solar panels at city buildings. If you look at like the police station, I think that's the most obvious, where it's like the school district where we have the carports or they all have solar panels. And we had a contract with Tesla to install battery backup systems at city buildings. Traffic signals have been replaced with LED bulbs, which are much more energy efficient. And we have over 7,000 street lights that have been switched at a pretty hefty expense to the city. But in the long run, we see the savings by doing that. And it's also saving our environment. So it's all a package to do that. We've had a $32 million upgrade with our wastewater treatment plant, which the biggest component of that is to save energy in the operation out there, because that is an operation that does take an awful lot of energy to complete the cleaning process of our sewers. So I think if you take a look at what our city's doing, we're making strides, and we continue to make strides, and we're continuing to look at ways to improve and become a stronger green city.
Thank you for that response. Moving on to the next question. In what ways do you make sure lower income neighborhoods and the homeless are staying safe, since they don't have a neighborhood watch or a homeowners association?
Probably you and I both don't have an answer to this, but it's a rhetorical question I'm going to throw back at you that we need help with. And that is, what is the definition of lower income? Where is the line? And that's a real tough one to come up with. And so with that in mind, I think the response is we encourage residents to report anything that doesn't seem right in their neighborhood. We have to do a little better job of talking our residents into reporting to the police. I think there's a reluctance, and I'm not sure it's people are afraid of the police. And in fact, it may even be that they think, well, that's trivial, we don't need to report it to the police. Or that they may think that the police may think it's trivial. That isn't the case. They can't do anything that they on a particular item if they don't know about it. So we have to encourage our community to not be afraid and don't be reluctant to contact the police and get these reports down, because even if it's not a crime that they can run out and take care of, it's certainly a method of getting the data that we see something moving in a direction that we don't like. I think the other part about this, the Simi Valley Police Department, and I'll throw in our city council with that group as police, we protect and serve everyone. And it's not based on income level. There's no division there. And so a person that's living in a multi-million-dollar home in a gated community should not be getting any better service than a person that's living in what they call an ADU in someone's backyard. And I am not aware of anybody that makes a distinction like that. If somebody calls for help, we respond in a very equal manner, and they are treated equally.
Our next question is, how is the city planning on handling the drought that California is entering as the fire season approaches?
Ah, a good one. I'd like to share with you that I've retired from the Ventura County Fire Department. So needless to say, and plus I've lived out here nearly all my life. And, of course, wildland fires are something we live with, just like we have to live with the winds that come every year. The water issue, we've done very well in our residents have complied with the state mandates to use less water. And this city has been exceptionally good. In fact, I think we received some awards for our actions in preventing the overusage of water. And we've educated, we've had up at the town center mall, green days where people come in and the city will teach them about drought tolerance planning, removing the turf, turning down your sprinklers, and in some cases doing away with the sprinklers. And then it was just a few years ago, we had plans where companies would come in and remove your turf or grass and replace it with ground cover that doesn't use nearly as much water. And that was a huge savings to the city. And those efforts continue on. And I don't want to make it sound like we're totally safe, because drought is a very big concern. But we do have about a 2-year supply of water if we should get no water for some time. And that's just pre-planning and doing a good job of planning. But that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that we should rest and think everything's just fine, because we have no idea how long the drought will last. So it's an ongoing process. It's something that I think we're going to have to live with, continuously in future years. And I think, the state has some issues with storage. They don't have quite enough storage to really make us comfortable to say we don't have to worry about droughts. So therefore, it's something that we have to practice, and it becomes a way of life for us.
Thank you. On to the next question. Simi Valley is known to have a large number of police officers that work or live in the city. What regulations or protocols are in place to ensure accountability so officers don't abuse their power that is so sadly seen more often in the media throughout the US?
The question comes from probably some materials that used to be relevant, and as they're no longer it's outdated materials that say there's these large amounts of police officers, and the city of Simi Valley doesn't have any more law enforcement officers or public officials living here than there are in any other California cities. I mean, we don't stand out in the database as, whoa, look at all the cops that live there or something like that. And the other thing is it's just like, I can't tell you necessarily how many airline pilots are here and what we would do to them for flying over here. I know that's a bad example, but we don't ask our citizens where they work and what they do. That's stepping over the line. It may not even be constitutionally available. And when we talk about the abuses, I think this gets back to what I said in my opening statement, that we're looking at a national question here. And I prefer to look at Simi Valley because that's the people I represent as closely as possible. I can't ignore national trends, but I can certainly try to focus on Simi Valley. And I'm not aware of any abuse of any of our officers of their power. Now, if there is, there's protocols and rules within the police department. And if somebody was abusing their powers and it came to light to our police chief or upper police staff, that officer or those officers would be dealt with and there'd be disciplinary action. And we have a very strong police department, and they have very strong guidelines that they have to follow. So if you're aware of any abuses, you need to make us aware of them too, so it can be addressed.
All right, so that's actually going to complete the amount of questions that we have for this interview. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I just would like to say that I think we have a great community here in Simi Valley. And I think that, like any community, we're not perfect. I don't know of anybody that is perfect. And I think we can together build the community by identifying areas that we can improve on. That's fine. And then we need to take the action to improve on those areas. But I think for the most part, we're a very good community, a great place to raise your kids. We're a safe community. We have a good police department. I always say what brings people to our community, new people to our community, is education, which we have good schools, low crime rate, which we certainly have a very low crime rate, and jobs. And an area that we didn't talk about today, but definitely deserves discussion, is housing. And that's an area that is a complete difference, or a subject that should be discussed on its own, because it's very complicated. And I would encourage you to reach out to us or somebody, or go through Kristen, and have a discussion about housing, because there's a lot to be understood about our housing issue, and we need to address it, and we need to provide housing for workers and to keep this city strong and vital. So I encourage you to continue your work as a city council, youth council, and this is your city hall. And I very much encourage you to anytime, give me a call, come in, take a look, take a tour if you have not, and understand the workings of the city hall, because it's something that you'll always be able to use in your future. And hopefully you'll be able to come back and live in Simi Valley and have a very strong voice for this community.
Thank you for that. We wanted to just thank you again for your time. Your responses were extremely informative and valuable, and we really appreciate you being here.
No,
So I
once
think-
again, I appreciate you asking me. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
So that's actually going to complete the amount of questions that we have for this interview. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Just would like to say that I think we have a great community here in Simi Valley. And I think that, like any community, we're not perfect. I don't know of anybody that is perfect. And I think we can together build the community by identifying areas that we can improve on. That's fine. And then we need to take the action to improve on those areas. But I think for the most part, we're a very good community, a great place to raise your kids. We're a safe community. We have a good police department. I always say what brings people to our community, new people to our community, is education, which we have good schools, low crime rate, which we certainly have a very low crime rate, and jobs. And an area that we didn't talk about today, but definitely deserves discussion, is housing. And that's an area that is a complete difference, or a subject that should be discussed on its own, because it's very complicated. And I would encourage you to reach out to us or somebody, or go through Kristen, and have a discussion about housing, because there's a lot to be understood about our housing issue, and we need to address it, and we need to provide housing for workers, and to keep this city strong and vital. So I encourage you to continue your work as a city council, youth council. And this is your city hall. And I very much encourage you to anytime, give me a call, come in, take a look, take a tour if you have not, and understand the workings of the city hall, because it's something that you'll always be able to use in your future. And hopefully you'll be able to come back and live in Simi Valley and have a very strong voice for this community.
For that. We wanted to just thank you again for your time. Your responses were extremely informative and valuable, and we really appreciate you being here.
No,
So I
once
think-
again, I appreciate you asking me. Have a good day.
Thank you.